Okay. Now, what I'm going to say, how many guys are in the room? 1, 2, 4, 5. Okay, y'all just close your ears, okay? Because this is a ladies' night. So, you guys we're going to blow some hormones on y'all. How about that? Now, when Leah told me that she wanted to speak about fearless, I thought, oh, that's wonderful, because one of the greatest fears in the top 10 is public speaking. And guess which one of those fears that I have as well? Public speaking. There's a lot of fears that we have, and when you take a poll, it can vary from anywhere from snakes to public speaking, to needles, to mice, to cockroaches, to thunder and lightning, to flying. It gets a little deeper. It can go into disease and intimacy issues and rejection and germs. Can even go into uncertainty, getting hurt, inadequacy, abandonment. But let's go a little bit more personal. How about fears of what if? What if he comes home and says he's found somebody else? What if I lose my job? What if I have cancer or some other debilitating disease? Or what if disaster comes to my loved one? And the list can go on and on and on. And if you're like me, sometimes you spend your nights battling those fears because something has happened in the middle of the day, whatever, in life, and you begin to wonder. Well, we're going to talk about fear and how to overcome it. Now, the picture that you see here is a Bible story that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But I want to go to the next slide. I love Pinterest. It has some great ideas, great quotes. And when I kind of put in just sayings and quotes about being fearless or having courage, all kinds of things came up that were beautiful, and I just wish that I could copy and paste them everywhere. But one of the sayings that I came across was from Nelson Mandela, because I really feel like he speaks what was in my heart. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph of it. The brave man or woman is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Fear and being fearless is really a lifelong journey. When you start out as a little child, there's so many things that children do with absolutely no fear because they trust. They trust the parent or they trust the grown-up. I have a little 3-year-old grandson and 2 granddaughters on the way. So I'm already broke because I'm buying 2 of everything, 2 girl things. And then, of course, Noah gets it all anyway. But, he can be right here on the ledge. If I'm in front of him, what he sees is me, and there's absolutely no fear. He just jumps. But yet he does have fear. He doesn't like to be left at daycare, especially by his mama. There are things that he doesn't like. That's yucky, or that's this. Or he will scream like a girl if he sees a bug of any kind. Now, the boy has no fear. He will jump in the water. Doesn't matter if it's 10 foot deep, 2 foot deep. He's a little fish. But you show him a bug, and he's jumping on everything. Hold me, there's a bug. One time, he even saw a dead worm. He said, it's a baby snake. I tried to convince him that it was dead. It wasn't going to hurt him, but no, it was a baby snake, and that was all it was. He's crawling up on my head. We all struggle, and as we grow older, fears change. There's some things that we get over and we understand, and then other things creep into our lives. So it's something that we have to overcome. It's a journey. There's a story that I want to talk about, and I think it's a very important story, and it comes from the book of Mark. I think it's important because it's mentioned in 3 of the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And John is the only one who doesn't talk about it, but John's purpose in writing that book was something completely different. So I want to read to you this story. Now, this is probably one of my favorite women in the Bible because I can relate to an internal issue that she has, and we're going to discuss that. Matthew 5. When Jesus had again crossed over by the boat to the other side of the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue or church leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all that she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I could just touch his clothes, I would be healed." Immediately, her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" "You see all the people pressing and crowding against you," his disciples answered, "and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. When the woman, knowing what had happened to her, she came and she fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, she told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." Now, this story touches me because it's a woman, and that's all who we are. And she had had an issue. Now, I want you to understand a little bit about the culture of the time. She had struggled for 12 years with this issue, some kind of bleeding. And we're going to assume that it's a feminine type bleeding. 12 years. Now, in culture, if you were on your cycle, you could not be around people. If people touched anything that you had touched, sat where you sat, touched your clothes, they were considered unclean until evening. They had to wash their clothes. They had to take a bath. She was not allowed to go socially. She couldn't go to church and sit with the other people. She was always on the outside. We can assume that she was probably divorced, because after all, what man would be required to stay with a woman if she couldn't perform her wifely duties? We don't know if she was childless, but we can assume that she probably was. So she was shunned because children were everything. She was constantly at the riverbed or at the local laundromat washing out her dirty laundry. She was what I consider sick and tired. Bags under her eyes, anemic, weak, depressed, hopeless, desperate. She had suffered much at the hands of people who she thought could bring her healing, and she was left broke and worse. Now, I think all of us could understand somewhat this issue. However, when we read through Bible text, sometimes we don't really grasp time frame. So let's say most women or girls start their cycle about 12. So by the time she was 24 years old, half of her life was spent as an outcast. At 36 years of age, a third of her life And at 48, a fourth of her life. And at 48, you're pretty close to menopause, so you're not going to be worrying about that too much, but menopause has its own issues, I can guarantee. For those of you, we'll be there. We'll sympathize with each other. Every time that she looked in the mirror, she saw failure, disappointment, shattered dreams, loneliness, maybe the big scarlet L, loser. Nobody wants to be around you. 12 years is a long time to look in mirrors and be reminded of what you don't have. She became so sick and tired, so desperate, so ready for a change, that when she had heard rumors about Jesus, I think she was ready to step out. She rose up within her enough faith to overcome her fear. Now, we don't know if she saw Jesus firsthand and witnessed his miracles, or if she just heard about him, but she knew that he was in her town. And she thought, I don't need to talk to him. I don't need to be seen. All I want to do is sneak up behind him. So Jesus was in the middle of this procession going to a synagogue leader's home, and she just photobombs the whole thing. She just sneaks up. Nobody's going to notice her. She can disguise her clothes. She can put her veil on and cover her head and maybe wear new clothes or something different. Just sneak out, get in the crowd, get behind Jesus, and just snag him. I don't need to talk to him. I don't want him to even see me. I just want to touch him. And bam, she touches him. Her life has changed. She instantly feels something within her that's different, and she feels healed. She has been living in solitude for so long. I think she was going to be quite happy to just skip on back home and have her little celebration dance all by herself. But guess what? Jesus didn't let her. There's a reason for that. He felt energy come out of his body. And so he begins to question, who touched me? Who touched me? And the disciples think it's a stupid question. Lord, everybody's touching you. People are pressing everywhere. If you've been to a Saints game, you know how it is in the crowds. Everybody is on top of everybody. But he knew something was different. Now, I believe that he didn't try to call this lady out to embarrass her, but he called her out for a reason. He knew that she needed to proclaim what had happened to her. You see, ladies, what happens to us many times when we're baby Christians and everything is new, it's just so fun and so exciting, and then we walk a little bit long on the journey and things get a little bit more normal. And if we don't confess what Jesus does for us over and over, we kind of push it down like this. And then time goes by a little bit longer, and we don't want anybody to know that we used to be a wreck, that we all came out looking like this. But none of us come out looking like this. We're only here by the grace of God. But you know what? We need to share our story, because Satan can rob us of our testimony. Not that the testimony goes away, but then we begin to question. That's his biggest trick, I believe. He puts doubt in our minds. Did that really happen? Do you really need to talk about that? Do you really want to go there? Well, if you do, then everybody's going to think this, and you want them to think this. But there's power in honesty. There's power in authenticity because we are relational. God gives us each other because we need each other. Now, I believe that in our journey, we come across a lot of different people. And he gives us those people for a reason. Now, if you want to put up slide number 4. Jesus wanted this lady to be free, just like he wants us to be free. And if we don't begin to confess what Jesus did for us, whether it's healing us, whether it's changing our thinking, whether it's saving our souls, we need to confess that. We need to talk about that. Because if we don't, fear, condemnation, shame can creep in. Because it's a human tendency. Why is that? Because the devil, he loves to mess with our humanity. And that's where he gets us. Because if we're ashamed, then we want to stay hidden. And if we have Jesus inside, but we want to hide him, then nobody can see the Jesus within us. So I believe it's very important that we confess. Now, James 5:16 says, confess your sins one to another and pray for each other so God can heal you. When a believing person prays, great things happen. Confess your faults. Sin is defined as an immoral act, a transgression against divine law, or an act regarded as a serious or regrettable fault, offense, or omission. Now, I'm not talking about being raw. There's a difference between being real and being raw. I have a daughter who is different than I am, and she will verbalize everything that she thinks. And I'm like, honey, you need to filter some of that. But Mama, you're just Mama, and I can talk to you however. And I'm like, no, you can't. You can be real without being raw. I don't think that you have to go, when you begin to talk to people about where Jesus brought you from, that you don't have to go into the nitty-gritty of every dark and dirty place that you've been. I don't think that that's so necessary, because you don't want to drag people down. And I don't think that we need to give glory to the enemy about 30 minutes of us talking about wallowing in the pit and 2 minutes of Jesus brought me out of it. I would rather talk about I was in a pit, but Jesus brought me out, and look where he's brought me to. Because it's all about Jesus. Now, why I think it's important for us to talk about that is because if we don't, if we want to hide something, where does our minds usually go? It usually goes to something that is a secret, some hidden thing. Now, I will make a confession. I do love to shop. And I have shopper's remorse sometimes. So I have to take stuff back. But I learned this from my mother, so it's a generational curse. But you buy something and you put it in the closet, and weeks or a month can go by because I'm a clearance shopper. So, it's not usually like in season right now. It may be next, whatever. And so, I'll get it out, I'll put it on, I'll take the tags off, hide them way in the trash can, And my husband will say, oh, is it new? Oh, no, I've had it for a long time. Had it for a long time. Oh, really? Okay. Did I pay for that? No. It was was on the credit card a long time ago. It's already been paid for. You didn't pay for it now. You paid for it like 4 months ago. But just things like that. It's things that are secret that we want to hide, that we want to just kind of stuff down. That's where the enemy will get me. And it may not be something deep, dark. It just might be something, you had some pretty awful thoughts about her. And then I can dwell there for a long time. And I'm not thinking, as Philippians 4 says, on anything that is good, that is pure, that is holy, that is just, that is of good report, but I am just thinking about negative, negative, negative. And so then the next time I see that person, guess where I'm at? I'm already way down here instead of building one another up. But it's important for us to be real with one another, but not necessarily raw. Guard your words. Guard how you say them. And guard who you talk to. You don't necessarily have to give all the information of your whole life to every person that you come across. But God will put certain people in your life for a certain time, for a certain reason. Because 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says, encourage one another and build each other up. That's why we need each other. That's our purpose, among other things. Maybe it needs to be number 8 over here on your culture. Encourage and build each other up. Because we know that the world does enough bringing us down. And you know, it's not just the outside. It's the inside. I can do a lot of damage to myself. You know, but Satan wants to keep those words of negativity, of realness, like a noose around our neck. Now, several years ago, we had a dog. His name was Dakota. And I love dogs. We live in a house on about 4.5 acres. We have a lot of yard. We have a lot of yard work. We had a lot of flower beds, many of which have already been mowed over because my husband doesn't like to go around circles. He likes straight lines. So I was like, okay, we'll get rid of that one. But Dakota was a rescue dog. And Dakota had a reputation of running. Now, he was a Siberian Husky, so he ran. It's in his nature. But he had been trained to be on a dog run, and he always had a chain or a rope around his neck. And as long as Dakota had that chain, it was just basically a rope. It was hooked to his collar, and it drug about 15 feet. As long as he had that, he could walk anywhere in our yard, unchained. He never ran off. He felt the weight of the noose. Now, was he in prison? No. Was he free? Not really. But he thought he was in prison. He thought he was trapped. He thought he couldn't get free because he felt the weight. Well, ladies, there's names that we give ourselves. The world will give us names. But the most damaging names are the ones we give ourselves. We'll give ourselves superficial names like, you're too tall, you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too short, you're too ugly, your nose is too big, your hair is too long, your hair is too short, your eyes aren't the right color. We can do those, but we usually tend to go a little bit deeper. You're unfit. You're unhealthy. You're a liar. You're a cheat. You're an adulteress. You're a gambler. You're depressed. You're addicted. You're unworthy. You're no good. Am I hitting any of the ones that you've heard yourself? But all those are untrue. Now, maybe they are partly reality. Maybe we have done some of those things. But that's not where God wants us to be. He calls us something different. He calls us by his names. Now, Satan would like us to keep having those names around our neck, that we're wearing it like a noose, and we don't feel like we can do anything, because most of us think, oh, that's great. God touches her. God uses her. She's got a great voice. She can speak. She can talk to people. She has the gift of hospitality. She loves kids. But I don't think he can use me. I'm not good enough. Or I can't sing that well. Or I don't have those talents. Or I can't do that. Or maybe somebody could do it better. That's not freedom. That's not where we live. That's not who God called us to be. He called us to be fearless. He called us to be an overcomer. He called us to be redeemed. He called us to be pure. He called us to be holy. He called us to be joyful. He called us to be a helper. He called us worthy. He called us daughter. And that's who we are. And when we allow him to wash us and to get deep, deep inside of us, the noose comes off. We don't care about all that anymore. Yes, God, I was that, but Jesus changed me. I'm not that anymore. I'm not angry anymore. I'm peaceful. You see the exchange? But we have to allow God to do that, to make that exchange within us. Come on. The story doesn't really end there. I want you to see something. On the next chapter over, in Mark chapter 6, it's roughly 3 or 4 months after this woman's healing. And I believe because she spoke up, it was a huge crowd. But she spoke up. She said, it was me. I touched you. I was the one. I didn't even want to look at you. I just wanted to sneak up behind you. But he called her up. He looked her in the eyes and said, daughter, because of your faith, you're healed. You're whole. Go live a whole life. So 3 or 4 months pass. I believe that she went and did business as usual. She still had to do everything she did every day. She was different, and people could tell. So Jesus was traveling around the Galilee area, and he went back to a place that he had been prior to her healing. And as soon as he got off the boat, people recognized him. And it says it, chapter 6, that they said, Jesus, can we just touch your clothes? The Bible says that they brought the sick to him and they said, hey, if we just touch your clothes, will you just let us touch your clothes? Why do you think they asked that? I believe the only reason that they could ask that question was because they had seen what had happened before. They had heard her testimony of what she had said and what she did and stepping out in faith. It doesn't say that she was without fear. It said she was trembling with fear. But just like Nelson Mandela said, courage is overcoming the fear. When you fear less and you have more faith. That's where we need to be. And it's a journey. It's a journey. But we're going to walk it together because we're sisters And that's what we do. We build each other up. We encourage each other. Now, Leah shared a story, and it was really right after we had met that she experienced this loss. Now, they're about the age of my kids. And although I had not ever experienced a miscarriage on my own that I know about, my daughter had. And I felt what a mother feels. Because when my daughter went through that, there was nothing I could do except just hold her and love her and tell her, you're going to make it. You're going to get through this. But I could only do that because I had experienced it through a child. When we share our weaknesses, our troubles, our anguishes, our faults, yeah, we're vulnerable, but yet we're also relatable. I can have empathy and sympathy for somebody else because I know what they've been through. And I can pray with them and I can encourage them like somebody who knows. That's the same what you can do. But you have to be open. You have to let all that facade, all that fakeness fall. You say, Jesus, here I am. And you know what? You're always enough. He loves you just the way you are. And he died. He sent his only son to die for you because he loved you that much. You're his. You're his girls. Each and every one of you. So don't listen to the lie that says, okay, that's for her, but it's not for me. Too far gone. No, you're not. This is for you and you and you and you. You're God's girls. Live strong. Live fearless. Not without fear, but less fear and more faith. Because you're an overcomer.